Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Selling Hour on this November 3rd, post-Halloween Candy Rush Social Selling Hour. This is actually episode number 25, so we've actually been doing this 25 weeks here. How are you doing today, Rachel?
I'm fantastic. Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday. We are, as always, live on Google Hangouts, doing our interview on this side of the face-to-face, looking in the digital eyeballs of our guests. And we are on Twitter using hashtag SShour, which we are, because of the time zones, I think the chats and things are messed up. I live in the only state that likes to feel different, Arizona, where we don't even change our clocks, but we screw up everybody else's because now I'm on Mountain Time before I was on Pacific Time, so I thank Arizona for messing up my events for the week. But we are actually also working on converting into a kind of a new platform called CrowdChat that allows us to embed this video actually within a browser window and the chat, so that you won't have to have the chat window up as well as the listening to the Hangout or enjoying the Hangout. So hopefully you guys will be seeing some information and some training on that, and we hope that would add some value to our social selling hour event. So first, I would like to welcome our guest, Anthony. Welcome to Social Selling Hour.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's great to be here.
Well, great to have you on. So I know you're from in Columbus, Ohio, and as a Steeler fan, I've always been told not much comes good from Ohio. But we're not gonna talk that one today. But give us a little background about who you are, and I think I told you before the show, I'm a big fan of your blog post today on compassion and a lot of the stuff that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm a speaker, a writer, a coach, a consultant, and an entrepreneur. So most people, if they're here and they know anything about me, they found me at thesalesblog.com. I've been writing there and publishing essentially every day, minus, I thought it was 10 days, but it was 13 days. I was in Tibet in 2010. I decided not to write because I went to Mount Everest instead. But other than that, I've written every day. What's that?
I guess that's a good excuse, I guess. Wow, that's impressive.
It was. Had I known now, I would have just went ahead and written anyway. I had no idea that China Mobile was so good. You can be on the phone at 17,000 feet because no one lives there, so there's no one fighting you for the little bandwidth that exists. But it's all good. And a lot of people know me from the work there around sales that I do, and I'm opinionated about social selling, of course. And I do a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, and a lot of coaching. That's where I spend most of my time.
All right. Well, I mean, I think so. Today's topic, I think we've been very blessed to have some really great guests. The last, all of our guests are great. I can't say that. But we've been, we've on a roll on a lot of people kind of talking about the importance of leadership, importance of buy-in, understanding that change is hard. A lot of the things that we know that we deal with in social selling. And I think one, that we kind of fail to kind of really hit home, which I hope we can today, is really the idea of leadership and what, not only what success is, but how we get to success. Because I think there's an element of, I hate that people assume with social media there's an easy button, and oftentimes I think social fails because they don't give the same effort or utilize the tool as the same as they use other tools. They just half-ass throw something at it, and then eventually it fails. They blame social media. I told you that posting cat pictures doesn't work for selling, and and they go on. So I think this topic, really will hit home, is really, talking about the secrets of social selling, but also being a sales professional, being a thought leader in general. Your blog, I know it's focused around sales, but I've been taking lots of notes for things that are way outside of sales, which I think is a breath of fresh air, for our overall audience and our community. So we'll jump into question one. In your opinion, what skill set does a modern sales professional need to improve on most?
Multitasking, if they're going to be on this show with you. That's what I think the most important thing is. Google Hangouts up. Rachel put a question. She threw it at me in the chat, and I know it's supposed to be over on Twitter at the same time. I feel like I need 2 or 3 assistants just to be able to help me through the process. It's interesting. What's changed most is we used to spend all our time teaching salespeople sales acumen type ideas. How do you close? How do you overcome objections? How do you talk about features and benefits? All that kind of stuff. Those are things that I would call sales acumen. And now, salespeople are predominantly business people. They help their customer get a result that they can't get without them. So they now need business acumen. They need to start thinking like a good general manager and become a business person that can actually help their client produce the results that they need, And it's a really a dramatic shift from what salespeople have been taught to do traditionally. And it's a higher bar, a higher hurdle for us to get over. We got to come in now and actually know how to help somebody and be able to talk like a business partner rather than a person who's trying to overcome objections or share features and benefits. They're smart enough to figure out the features and benefits looking online without you anyway. They really need you to bring a lot of chops.
Well, and I think that's interesting because we talked about that. I think it was David Meerman Scott was talking about just on an overall element of I write a lot and I deal a lot with the connected consumer, right? And so we used to I wouldn't say we always assumed that the consumer was stupider than or dumber than the salesperson, but when you thought of the idea that a sales guy really could do a little bit of research, know their product upwards, forwards and backwards, and they could really be the pronounced expert on a topic. And I think that's slightly changed now where, I mean, it's in the real sense of it, like my wife joked the other day, is like she goes into Best Buy and is asking for help at Best Buy, and she's not tech savvy, but because she was on Google and did a little bit of research, she almost feels smarter than the Best Buy employee. I think that's a change in mentality where 5 years ago, there's no way she would have felt like that was the piece. So I think that's a really important element that you're talking. And when you think about business person, do you classify a business person having less focus on the actual sale or more focus on the actual customer? How do you kind of frame that with that answer? I love that answer, by the way.
It has to change to where we're customer focused, and it's interesting. For a consumer sale like your wife at Best Buy, there's absolutely no question that information parity exists. The Best Buy person has some technical specs, they know the price. You pull up your iPhone, you pull up the Best Buy site, because you're probably just showcasing in there while you're there anyway, right? Yep. You know that you're going to order it on Amazon if it's $200 cheaper. They don't really have much more information. But when you think in the B2B setting, you'd better have more information than your customer. And this is something I wrote about and shared last week. Your customer's a generalist, but you have to be a specialist, which means you need the deep knowledge, what I call situational knowledge. So this means I've seen this lots of times. I know how it works. I know how the story ends when you make bad decisions because I've seen it go off the tracks, or I've helped to make it go off the tracks when I got something wrong. But we take all the situational knowledge, and the customer can't have that kind of knowledge because they only have their one experience working inside their own company. But as a salesperson, you've worked with hundreds of companies, so you've seen lots of different views. That gives you just a greater depth. It's one of my favorite words because I don't even know if I can say it right, but it's a German word called Fingerspitzengefühl, which is fingertip feel. And you just know it. You intuit things, and you can see it. Even though you can't describe to somebody, how do you know all that? You know it because you've seen it, you've felt it, and you know what can happen just from your breadth of experience. Hang on, I got to ask for a timeout. Am I supposed to be pasting answers into Twitter at the same time?
You
yes,
can, or
as your fingertips allow.
Yes, I mean, and so like it's great. We have a great community. Like Kristen Cardos on Twitter already put in there. In the B2B setting, you better have more information than your customer. So people are taking your quotes out there. So I'd say, don't worry about having to get all of those in there, as it seems that your quotes are hitting home. And we do appreciate the Twitter chat community for not only quoting and sharing the stuff that you have to say, but adding your element. And one of the pieces that one of the person, someone in the community said, Kyle Hendricks said, for the answer to one is quit acting like they know everything. You need to quit shoving products down people's throats. And so that sounds like a very anti-salesperson that maybe has had a bad experience with the sales professional being overly salesy and shoving something down. But I thought that that kind of speaks to the customer, the customer's voice.
It's a good quote. I mean, generally, if all you've got is a product and that's what you think your job is, then that's what you do. But your job is really to help your client get the outcome that they need. So it has nothing to do with the product. It has to do with the end result. I say this all the time. People don't buy drills. They buy holes. And they only buy the holes that they really need or they really want. And so you come along and you say, I've got the best drill on earth. Nobody cares about your drill. They care about holes, and only when they care about holes, too. So you have to be compelling enough to explain why people need something, or else you feel like you're shoving a product down somebody's throat, which no one wants.
No, it's surprising how many salespeople are still very feature-driven when they're giving you their pitch instead of benefit-driven.
Well, it's easy to try to let the product do the work for you. And if you got a great product, you say, let the product carry the sale. Why do I have to do that?
Well, so you have a job, but
Exactly. It's wrong, but that's what they feel.
No, I've been searching for some new marketing automation software recently, and I'm so surprised at how little people know about their competitors. So I know, speaking of knowing the elevator pitch for your own product, but you should also know the pros and cons of all of your competitors. So that's I was really surprised talking to some very well-known companies, and I would name drop like, oh, I just did a trial with XYZ, and they're like, oh, I've never heard of them. Like, how's that possible?
It shouldn't be.
Common. No, which actually kind of leads into question 2. So why is a mindset of continuous learning important for a sales professional?
You're falling behind. I mean, you're already falling behind. I mean, the amount of knowledge that is being gained by human beings is staggering. I mean, we're doubling it every 5 years now. And what your client expects from you has changed so dramatically. The bar has been raised. If all you can do is drop the product off at the door for me, you're useless. If all you can do really is give me a good experience, you're useless. You have to get to what I call level 4 value, which is you're my strategic partner. You're doing my thinking for me. I don't have to study your industry because I know you're studying it. You're my specialist, so I can be the generalist. I know that you're out looking around corners, helping me see what is going to be the next thing for me. What's the next thing I'm going to have to deal with when it comes to political or economic or scientific or technological changes? How do I protect my business and decide how to move it forward? And if you do that, that makes you valuable to me. But if you do less than that, not so valuable. So continuous learning is critical. And I would recommend starting by reading widely, studying, listening to things. I wrote something a week or so ago where I'm right now in the middle of 3 things, personal development programs. One for speaking, because I would like to be a better speaker, so I'm investing my time there. One is a leadership program, and I'm investing my time there. And one is sort of rewiring your belief systems. It's somebody else's content, because I love that kind of content, and I'll pick up almost anything that looks like that. But it's been really, really important for me personally, and it will be for everyone listening or watching this, to think about what's my personal development plan. Your company's not going to grow you. You have to grow on your own if you're going to be valuable to your clients now and in the future.
All right, I like that. That's. I mean, it's so funny. I do a lot of stuff with employee advocacy, and I blame the employee just as much as the brand oftentimes, and that usually shocks people when I, because for me it's like, how I first found value on social media, and this was way back when I started. I remember having a Twitter account, and people said, well, what were you finding value? And YouTube was my value because I switched careers, I pivoted, I started in a company that had nothing to do with my major in college, and the only way I could keep up was YouTube, right? I was watching YouTube lessons, I was watching things, and my passion is change, and one of the things that often happens with change is people are change or to embrace new skill sets or to train because they think that proves what they've been doing prior to wrong. But I like to always say it the other way, like all of the things you've been doing have led you up to today, and now it's your turn to kind of continue that learning. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. I've going through your blog post and a couple of the videos that you have up on YouTube as well, like the idea that it's a continual learning thing. I think we can't say that enough because it's our responsibility as employees, as entrepreneurs, to not only understand what the customer wants, but also understand new technology, be learning and growing ourselves as well.
Absolutely. It's your primary responsibility is to grow so that you can become the biggest, best version of yourself. And the more you do that, the better results you're going to produce in life, no question.
Well, yeah, and I think I'm curious, when you hear the word personal brand, and that's something that we talk about with growth and all these training and all this stuff, do you think of personal brand as something that is only and physically owned by the employee, or is that something that is invested in by the? How do you feel like that term or that topic kind of fits in that the professional development cycle?
It's weird because I think that goes back to like '99 Tom Peters, brand you from Fast Company, and that's the part where people really started sitting up and paying attention and saying, what does that mean for me? And then the toolkit arrived. We're all sitting on laptops in different parts of the world communicating this way, and we're publishers. and we're videographers, and we're photographers, and we're writers, and we're doing all these things. So then this toolkit arrives, and it really lets people who want to really express themselves and go out and share how they create value in the world, which is important. But then you're the company, and you start looking at Brian, and you're like, Brian, whoa, brother, you are coloring way outside the lines now. You know, wait a second, is this about you, or do you work for me? And people are worried about it. But the fact of the matter is, people, when they have somebody that goes out and represents their brand that's got the social presence, the brand benefits by borrowing trust and credibility from that individual who's built the trust and credibility in the community. That's how the social tools work. When you go out and you create tremendous value for people, other people can borrow that by saying, look, this person represents us, which is why all the affiliate kinds of things and the advertising and stuff works. It's borrowed authority, it's borrowed trust, it's borrowed credibility. So businesses are going to have to understand that some of us, not everybody, but some of us are going to play. And I've actually had friends who emailed me in the last couple of weeks saying, I've got this opportunity, but they said I'm not allowed to do any personal branding at all. If I write, it has to only be under their banner. I can't do anything, can't have my own Twitter feed because they're so afraid of it. Personally, I think that's a mistake. They would be better off letting somebody who really could be a great representation of their brand do that. Now, I understand some people are going to go way outside the line, so we need to be careful and put some guidelines on it. But for most cases, if you're really thinking about your personal brand, it's somebody who understands the professional side of that, and they're not going to go across any lines that are going to cause their company problems anyway.
Well, I think there's also the element of, if you create loyalty and you build that trust between the employer and the employee by helping them grow their personal brand, they will also have loyalty to you as the brand. I think too often we hear about the horror stories about this person that had a great personal brand and they left their company. That's partially because the company never leveraged it, never took it, they never invested in themselves. You ask that same person if they would have been invested, and I'm speaking as an example of one of those where I think that's partially where we get to these conversations. And so I love the idea where you're talking about leveraging trust, and we're not going to talk about influencers today, but I think that's a little bit of the influencers game as well, is that when influencers today you're not influential because of the book you wrote, but you're influential because of your relationship with the community today. And I think that's a different way of even looking at influence, and that has to do with the trust that you were kind of talking about there. So I love that kind of view on it for sure.
Yeah, it really is about trust. I mean, and that's every relationship that we have, whether it's a personal relationship or a commercial relationship, is built on trust. And you can portray that by being credible, by being reliable, by engaging and creating value in the community faster than just about anything.
So I'm curious. I want to pull this in from Dave Stein, one of our previous guests, and a big fan of that. A majority of our guests are here chatting today, and he said, creating value is not selling someone something. Help them achieve their business plan. That's value. Just curious, just your take on that, because I think that's a neat little spin on kind of what we're kind of talking about.
I'm just happy that the great Dave Stein would step into a chat where I am. Because Dave's a great friend and absolutely a smart guy. And he's spot on. It's about creating value for other people. That's what you do. That's where the real leverage is, and that's where the action is. And really, if you want to grow, the bigger your contribution, the bigger you grow.
Love it. I love that. So we'll jump into question 3. So we talk about how does investing in personal growth equate to professional success. I think you kind of talked a little bit about that, a little bit on the professional success. I would love to hear you kind of elaborate on that when it talks about, from pre-sale to sale to post-sale. Like how when you think about personal growth, like how does that leverage in that personal success path?
It's a tough question, but it's one I've spent a lot of time thinking about. You're obligated to know how things work. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine about, I've got a son who's an actor. He's going to go to college for acting. And the question was, what's his fallback plan? And I never had a fallback plan. I don't know if he's going to have a fallback plan, but I want him to take a run at whatever he wants to do, and I want him to get a liberal arts education. And why do I want him to get a liberal arts education? Because I want him to know how people work. I want him to understand humanities. I want him to understand psychology and sociology, because every single problem that we have in life, on the other end of that problem is a human being. And when you think about businesses, the biggest challenge any business has is creating a culture that allows people to perform and make the greatest contribution. It's a cultural issue. And what's on the other end of the culture? People, cynical people, people that don't believe because they've been burned before, they've been in unhealthy environments. Everything that we do is about helping other people. It's about helping other people grow. It's about helping them with their own personal psychology. And the more that you grow personally and the more effective you become, the better results you produce. I still go back all the time to Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I read it about every 2 years, and every 2 years it's like a new book. And I keep saying, damn, was that in there last time? Did I miss that? How could I miss this important, and whatever you're reading at that time, if you're dealing with something, that feels like it's the most important thing. But everything in that in that book is important. So you have to figure out how the world works. You have to figure out how people work. You have to figure out how your business works. You have to figure out how your client's business works. It's complicated getting results, and the best strategy that you can have is to grow big enough that you can figure out how to make a bigger contribution.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. And it's funny, I'm often asked like what skills or what things that I've learned along the way that help me the most in business or in when I'm presenting, and I often say poker. I played professional poker for a while, and I studied, I wasn't a math guy. I studied nonverbal cues, and I understood people, and even the idea of what elements of someone's personal traits by how they present themselves or introduce their name. What does that say about what do they want to share, and having their feet in front of you, and so many of those things have nothing to do with the product or the technology I'm selling, but it's about that one-to-one personal relationship. And I think you don't have to be an extrovert or introvert or talk a million miles an hour like me, but the fact that you understand people, and this post, I can't remember I think it was Brian Kramer posted it today, and he talked about if you focus on the users and you embrace learning and getting to know the users, as the social networks and technology change, that becomes easy because you know the users, and then you don't have to try to learn the users each time. I thought that was kind of a powerful conversation to kind of leap on that. When you talk about, we have some great ones coming out of the community here on Twitter. When you think about personal growth, and you talked about one of my favorite words, culture, how are you or how are we educating CEOs, leaders, business owners to see value in that personal growth? Because there's no ROI, there's no line item in their daily agenda that says learn something new. But how do we fix that culture of show me the ROI of you investing in yourself?
I love ROI questions. And most of the things with an ROI, we can't prove at all. What's the ROI of a thank you card? Nobody knows, but everybody in the world would agree you should send them, right? What's the ROI of a phone call when there's no reason to make that phone call at all? But just a perfectly proactive call to say, Brian, just wanted to see what's going on in your world. How you doing, man? What's the value of that? How do I capture the ROI? We don't have a clue. It's the same thing with the personal development. How do you figure out what the ROI is? You don't know what the ROI is, but we can guess that it's there at some level. And here's the challenge, I think, with big company CEOs. With smaller companies where the culture's right, it's a different kind of animal. But with big companies, especially public companies, they're so driven by something called shareholder value, which I'll never understand in a million years. How can there be shareholder value unless you're creating value for customers and unless you're creating value for the employees that serve those customers? Because there is no financial result that is generated by focusing on people who own stocks. It just doesn't happen that way. The only way to grow a business is to focus on customers and first focus on the employees that are going to serve those customers. So the better the employee I have and the better capable they are of serving my customer, the better my results. How do I prove the ROI? There's no great way to prove that. We know that people that spend time developing themselves produce better results, and we just have to take it on a leap of faith. You guys are in the social, this is a social selling chat. Who knows what the ROI on a tweet is? No one knows. But we do know that connecting with people and sharing and trying to create value and deepening relationships matters over the long run, so we do these things. And I think personal development fits into that same bucket. Can I prove it? No, but you can't prove that it doesn't. And if you would have a very tough time making the argument that personal development is going to hurt anybody in any way. One of the other fears that big companies tend to have is if you grow too big, you're going to leave. But you're going to leave anyway. I mean, you have to let people grow because that's ultimately what we're here to do.
And I fight that argument with, if they grow so big that they're bigger than you and they leave, they're now your biggest advocate and your biggest example of what you just did. I mean, they're telling your success story for you. They could be your greatest recruit, because it's like, look at this person that grew throughout my company, was able to do what they're doing now, and not only do I embrace it, but I'm proud that they left. I think that's, if we flip that script, instead of being like, crap, what do we do if they go? Let's not invest in them. We've seen that quote fly around. I think it goes around LinkedIn every week, where it talks about investing in them, investing in your employees, because the worst case is if they stay and you don't invest them, they're now crappy employees that are there to stay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about recruiting and culture, and I refuse to ever believe that someone's culture is defined by their website. Their culture is defined by their employees. So like the LinkedIn profile pictures tell me more about their culture than anything that their LinkedIn brand page will ever say. And I think that's something I love, that you kind of, when you're talking about personal growth, you talk about culture, because I don't think those two are often linked. And I think a great culture helps and takes advantage of those that are focusing on personal growth.
A great culture demands growth. A great culture says, I expect you to be your very best here and to give your best effort and to grow to be the biggest you can be. That's a great culture. That's a rare culture, but it's a great culture.
So we've talked a lot about companies that fear that they'll lose their employees if they allow them to get too social. What's the other side of that story? So what if you are supporting your employees, but your employees are not wanting to be more social? How do you recommend that C-level and managers can encourage employees to self-educate and get out there?
If you want to encourage them to self-educate, you said to be more social. Did you mean to say that? To be more social, or to?
Well, being on social is a huge component of successful business. So I think that is holding a lot of companies back, and the employees personally.
I spend a lot of time in the world of sales, and the challenge, I say a lot of that challenge really doesn't belong with us. It belongs with marketing and giving people content to share and educating them on how to share, what to share, when to share, because they don't get much education on that. So they think, well, I know I'm supposed to be doing something. Well, what do I do here? I remember in 2007 when I got on Twitter and I said, what do you do now? I mean, okay, I'm here, but how do you use this? And nobody could give you an answer. I mean, you tweet. Okay, well, what? What do you tweet? And you don't know, but salespeople don't know. And I spend a lot of time trying to help marketing understand and bridge this gap. If you want to be social, you've got to have something that appeals to your customer. So what do you think about? You think about, where are they in their buying process? Do they know that they're dissatisfied or that they should be? So you have to create content that says, look, if you're not producing these kind of results, then there's probably some gap, and it might look like this, or it might be in this area, so that your customer can feel that. And then they have to start thinking about, how do I think about what I need? Lists are particularly great for thinking about 10 things you need to do to have a successful sales transformation, or whatever the case may be. That starts getting people to think about, what do I really need to make that happen? And then you think about, what are my options? So you define options and you differentiate yourself. But that's the kind of content creation that if you arm salespeople with that, the customers start to say, I get a feeling for what these people are going to be like to work with and how they think. And you're giving them something that they can work with to create the relationships of value that allow people to start engaging.
And I think that's also something that, no matter how great some tool is, no matter what the tool is, and social can be a tool, we can, someone that sucks, even using the tool, is still going to suck. Like that, like the tool doesn't make, and I think that's, if we focus on that side, and I know Gemma Davies posted a quote from Richard Branson, which I'm a big fan of the quote. It's, train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I think if you're confident enough as a leader that you've created an environment that they wouldn't want to leave, you shouldn't have any hesitation in empowering them to do great things. The question then comes, is it such a great culture that they don't want to leave? And I actually posted, I know there was actually a quote from Eric, and Eric asked a great question. I loved it. He's like, why do brands or companies not have more alumni associations or alumni affiliation? And that's a great question, because I was going to IBM Insight event last week, and one of the hashtag things that I was running, because I'm a geek for the social listening side, so I was running some lists, and I wanted to really build up my own ammo so that I could really be prepared for that event. And I actually followed the hashtag IBMer and ex-IBMer in someone's profile, and you're amazed how many people put ex-IBMer in their profile. And that to me is like, they're so proud that they work there or that they were attached there that they're willing to put that in their profile. That tells me light years more stuff than some website that tells me they have great employees that love their job.
Me too. I love that. That's a great story too.
So what do you think about the alumni idea? Like, what I mean, brands. I mean, it's no one likes to highlight that people leave. You know, and even Buffer being like a brand on the extreme where they are so transparent that they talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, including revenue, product. I don't think everyone's at the Buffer level yet, but I think there's an element there where like these are our famous alumni. If a college is saying these are our famous alumni, and I was in a fraternity, and the reasons I picked the fraternity I was in was because there was one of the guys that was there that was a famous Penn State alum that had this great thing that he had done, and that kind of why. I mean, that's a great. What do you think about that from Eric on the idea of alumni?
I think you're really lying in that it was beer that got you to join the fraternity, at least at some level. There was something.
Beer in proximity to the sorority house. I will say that had something.
All right, so now we're getting honest. And there's this alumni, so you can talk to your parents about why you made the choice.
Bingo, yes.
The idea of an alumni. I just wonder the other side, is there a survivors club, of the culture was so bad, I'm still here, and I survived that horrible leader. But I think you're right. The alumni idea has a lot of legs. It's a really good idea, and it says, I was brought up to believe these certain things because I worked under these certain leaders that had these certain values and these certain ideas. And I think that would be super powerful. And it definitely is for IBM. I know ex-IBMers. I've got a good friend, Dave Brock, and that group, that was a special experience for people that helped grow them as leaders. And they all lean back on that all the time.
I can't take the credit for that on Eric bringing that in there. Is and actually Dave Stein put in there, I'm an IBMer culture has been around for at least 4 decades. So anybody that claims that social is what is driving the adapter for culture, that's a great point by Dave, that it's not some. I like to think that social allows the little people to have a voice. So the ones before that, unless you were in marketing or comms, those were the only people having the voice of the company. Where today, every employee, every advocate, and every fighting person that hates your company has a chance to have their voice heard. And in that sense, you have to be real, because those cultures that the entire time were giving us this make-believe, in the prior years didn't have social as an outlet for their employees to kind of leverage and say, no, I left that place because it sucks, not because the press release said that we had a battle at vision of the company or so on. So I think that's actually a kind of a great one where we talk culture there. So I was curious, Rachel, from your side, and Rachel does, especially from a listening and a social engagement from the tools side. What are when we're thinking about like leadership and training? How does training fall into like Pipeliner? Do you have people coming to you asking for trainer at Pipeliner? Like, how does that work as far as like the personal growth of people that are utilizing your tool?
Well, in my experience, and I guess much like Anthony alluded to, it is a very marketing-enabled sales process and even social media strategy at Pipeliner, and that has been true for my last couple of companies. So yeah, definitely our CMO, Eric, who's participating in the chat today, very active in doing tool research with me and coming up for ideas for lead generation, and then especially lead nurturing, and heavily on social, as well as tying back into our automated tracks with HubSpot.
Dave Stein is my proxy. I can't keep up with the Twitter. I'm trying. I've been calling Dave Stein out. Dave is my proxy, so whatever Dave says, I agree with his position.
No,
yeah, Dave's a rock star.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We've had. I mean, the alumni list. I'm gonna take the first initiative, and we'll put the alumni list of our Social Selling Hour guests up on our new homepage when it launches. And that that's a great one too, because I think for me Rachel and I kind of put this chat together at the very beginning, and for us it was just really giving the community a voice. And we've been so honored to have such amazing guests and leaders that not only come back and chat, but also like yourself are sharing your insights today and are part of the community. And I think that's an alumni association. I'm proud to have SShour in my hashtag and something to do every Monday, no matter where it falls in the element of selling and building a personal brand, mainly because of these type of relationships. And I think when we talk about question 5, are we on question 5 or question 4, Rach?
4.
4. So question 4. See, Rachel keeps me in line. Multitasking. Too many screens going on right now. What is situational knowledge, and what role does it play in the buying process?
I think of situational knowledge as something more than experience. I would call it experience plus wisdom. What did you learn from all those experiences? And in the buying process, buyers have a lot of ideas about what they want or what they believe that they need. And sometimes those ideas are right, and sometimes those ideas are wrong, and sometimes they don't have all the considerations. They don't have all the information they would need to make a better decision. But when you have situational knowledge, when you have experience, when you've seen decisions being made, you've participated in those decisions, you've worked to execute against those plans, you start to get the idea of what might work, what might not work, what might have to change. And most of the time, the big idea in the world of sales right now is insight-based selling and challenger and challenging people. But mostly it's important that we collaborate and help the client get what they want. So it's being able to work them through what they need in the buying process by helping them understand what trade-offs are you going to make, how can you have what you want, maybe if you don't get it exactly the way that you think you're going to get it, but in some way that still gets you those outcomes. And that's the value in my experience for situational knowledge. It means that you've got some chops, you've been there, you've got ideas, and that you have the ability to help and get people what they really want.
I'm curious. I'm gonna fire one at you. So right after college, I took a job at UPS, and I was very lucky. I was a union type job. I was a driver. It made really crazy good money, way more than I could with my college degree in Northern Virginia at the time. And I left there because I worked real hard for a year, was ranked in the top 3 of over 500 drivers for what we had accomplished for the year. And I got no promotion of the 90 that were given out. And it was strictly stated, you get promoted via experience. And within a week, I turned in my 2-week notice, and I said, that's perfectly fine, but if I have to wait 12 years to surpass somebody that I'm already surpassing today. So I'm curious, when someone, you kind of talked a little bit about it, but how do situational knowledge and experience is key. I will never say that experience isn't valuable, but how do you weight those two when someone's coming in there and saying, this person understands our industry, but they're a newbie, versus someone that has experience and maybe doesn't have the same situational knowledge?
I haven't written this blog post. Well, I have written it. I haven't published it, I should say. But it's why the 10,000 hour rule isn't working for you. And the reason the 10,000 hour rule doesn't work for you is that people think that it's actually just doing something for 10,000 hours. And that's not at all what it is. And people read Gladwell in the 10,000 hours, and they completely missed the point that K. Anders Ericsson, who figured out the real science behind excellence, is it's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, which means if you're a violinist, you practice so deliberately on getting something right that after about an hour you have to go take a nap. And K. Anders Ericsson always says, you're working for 55 years, but it doesn't mean you're getting any better at it. And that's the thing. So situational knowledge is experience plus wisdom. So a lot of people can have the experience but have gained nothing from it. And this is why you chafed when they did this, is because you're thinking, these people may have been doing it longer, but they've learned nothing. I'm performing better than they are because I'm learning faster. I'm picking up the tips and the tricks and the skills to be able to generate a greater outcome than other people, and I'm getting passed over for that. And now we're back to culture again. If you're in a culture that believes experience counts for more than contribution, you're going to lose a lot of great people. That's what happened, and that's the story that I heard you tell.
No, you're right. No, I mean, I think you're spot on there. And it's not actually a story I think I've ever told, even on social media or a blog post, is for me, the UPS, I think I've probably left, every single time I've left a company or a job, it's actually been a great job itself and more money than what I left for. I always left for, ended up being more money, which is a trend I hope one day to stop doing. So hopefully I start leaving for more money. But for me, a lot of it was that idea, and I think you hit it home there on, matching not only experience but situational awareness. And today, I had a friend who wrote a blog post, Keith Carnes, and it was one of the funny ones. He's like, fire all the smart people, hire all the doers. And his sense was, a majority of the people can find enough and learn enough via Google, or find enough and learn enough via collaborating and having the power of a team. and they'll get stuff done compared to these ones that are the me environment where they're fostering all that information and they're not willing to drive that change. So I think that kind of covers that. I'm curious also from your experience, from a sales blog and sales perspective, experience in social selling doesn't really exist because social selling hasn't been out there very long, and I think when someone says they are the world's greatest social selling expert, that's almost like saying I'm the world's greatest at something for the last year that we just recently invented that we still haven't really defined. So how do you counter that when we're talking this knowledge and experience that's needed in a field that I think it's still we're still working the kinks out on how content marketing plays, and does a social seller have to know SEO and link tagging and those elements? How do you kind of foster that conversation in the world of, especially in leadership with social selling?
Here we go. So now we go the other direction. I don't even believe there's such a thing as social selling because I don't believe that's what we're doing. I think what we're really doing is marketing. And I think that what we're doing is we're developing the relationship and the foundation that allows us to sell in the future. And I'll push back on this, and I'll get hate mail, I'm sure, but this is how I think it works. It's above the funnel. It's demonstrating that I can create value. It's demonstrating that I have knowledge, that I have that situational knowledge. It's demonstrating that I have the ability to help you get a different result. And it's inviting a conversation. But it's not really selling, because selling is not just the conversation, it's the commitment gaining too. And commitment gaining doesn't work on social. If I'm asking you to buy, if I'm asking you to schedule an appointment and I'm doing it on Twitter, it's just the wrong place to do that. But to say, look, would you like to have a conversation, and then get them into the process, there's no more powerful toolkit available than the social tools right now. So salespeople have to be able to use them. Leadership should understand that we have to be able to use these, because the greatest challenge that we have now is opening relationships when people are busy, when they're overwhelmed, when we're asking them to do more with fewer resources than ever before. You've got to be able to develop that relationship and start connecting with people, and the social tools do that better than anything else you can use. I still think you need to pick up the phone and call people. I still think you need to ask people for referrals, but you also have to use this toolkit. So it's criminal negligence to say only social, but it's criminal negligence to resist it too. So we've got two groups of people from my view. We've got the people that social selling is everything, and we've got the people that say it's stupid, I'm not going to do it. They're both wrong. You're going to do everything just like you always have. But how does it help with the process? It shows that I've got trust. It shows that I'm credible. It shows that I have ideas. It allows me to nurture the relationship over time to be able to say, look, we've done this, we could help with this, this is how to think about this problem, this is how to make those trade-offs, where people can say, I get an experience of what it's like to be with these people, to work with them, and then I can say yes to that appointment request way easier. And I think leadership has to understand, if you want to shorten the sales cycle, let your people go out and start sharing how they're going to create value for people in a way that it makes sense. I'll say one last word about this, and then I'll let you guys tell me what you think about what I said. I know it's a little bit on the edge, but what I see businesses do is say, we can't give them our ideas. I mean, once we give them our ideas, then they'll know our ideas. Like, their ideas are so great and so secret, nobody else knows what you're doing. Of course, everybody knows what you're doing. They know what clients you have. They know these things, but they don't want anybody to share it. So when we go out and look at your website, it's got your address, it's got your locations, it's got your mission statement. It says nothing about what it's like to work with you or how you think about problems. And the best organizations when it comes to social selling are the organizations that are sharing their opinions, their ideas, their experiences, because that's what really allows us to connect.
No, I agree. And I think, unfortunately, the term social selling was poorly phrased. So I'm curious, actually, if you were able to rename it and start a new buzzword, what would it be? Like, what is the best term?
I don't know if I'm the right person to pick the best term for this, but it's really nurturing. It's really nurturing relationships. That's what I think I'm doing. This is what I think I'm doing right now. I think I'm trying to share with people ideas that benefit them without asking for anything. And I think that that's nurturing relationships instead of me just trying to make an ask. So I don't know that I get to pick the name. We've got social selling because other people picked it. But I think it's more about nurturing relationships so that the selling part can happen, and it's not the actual selling part.
Well, and I think that's also, the reason that we fall into these names, and these social selling idea and this idea of a social business. I wrote a blog post just the other day about, for me, I met 9 or 10 people this past week at an event that, to me, the true power of social was the hugs that I got meeting these people for the first time, because I built up a relationship with some of them, Ian and Ray, for 3 years on social, done hangouts together, but never met, face to face. And that conversation, and those, we went out that night and had dinner and did these things. Those were like, I even called it, and I even called it out. It was like my long lost best friend from high school, because we picked up where we left off on social. We were jumping in, but it wasn't like a awkward moment. And to me, if all of these brands can use social to create those relationships, when someone comes in your business or joins in a conversation, or when you want them to make that ask, that's what we often forget about the sales side is, if you're giving and providing this value, you build up that, like, it's like an ask bucket. I have jab, 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 right hook behind my, but I really do believe that when you have that bucket of all of these things that is that goodwill, when you make that ask, it's so easy, because not only do people want to help you, but they're like dying to do more, and that's because you've kind of extended there. And I like the way that you kind of talked about, Rachel and I joke this all the time, that we've been waiting to change social selling hour to some other term, but we don't want to change the buzz, and we like SShour. We'll have to change the S and the S at some point, but for us, a lot of it's about these people that are wanting to learn social to how they can do people.
I think social selling is stuck, so I think that's what we're living with. But what does it mean? It means nurturing those relationships like you described, because it reduces the friction later on. And like you said, imagine you worked on these relationships for this period of time. You show up and you're like long lost friends. We don't have to be strangers when we show up as salespeople either. We can give people that experience as salespeople, as marketers, as entrepreneurs, by using these tools. And the idea that you're talking about when you make the ask, I mentioned Covey before. Everyone, it should be required reading to read 7 Habits. But he talks about the emotional bank account. When you're dealing with human beings, you have to make deposits before you can make a withdrawal. And we a lot of times want to make a withdrawal as salespeople, which means I want to sell you something when we've made no deposits. Well, you got to have the deposits in there to cover it, and social is terrific for that.
There's your ROI.
There's your ROI.
Okay, so I know you talk a lot about personal leadership, so I'm really excited for you to share this with the community. So question 5 is, what is personal leadership, and how can it improve the productivity of a sales team?
Personal leadership, I was kind of stumped by that question when I saw it, because it's in the context. Personal leadership, I think, I would call self-discipline, and you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself, and you can't have commitments from others until you can keep the commitments you make to yourself. Those are the most important commitments, and it's kind of funny. I always talk about people with their calendars. Because if I make a commitment to show up at social selling hour at 4 o'clock on Monday, man, that goes right in my calendar. But if I make a commitment to go out and run, I don't write that calendar, because I'm the last person I worry about keeping my commitment to. But really, if you put it on your calendar, you're saying, I owe myself that same obligation that I owe to other people. When I promise myself something, it has to be important enough for me to codify it and say, come hell or high water, I keep my commitments to me. Because the better we are at keeping the commitments we make to ourselves, the better we are keeping those to our clients. And I mean, the cornerstone of all effectiveness, in my opinion, is self-discipline. It's the ability to will yourself to take action when you don't feel like taking action. I still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and write every day, and there's very few days where, now I'm waking up before 5 o'clock, but there's very few days where I think, it's awesome to be up at 4:45 in the morning. This is great. I never, it never feels that way, but I know the commitment that I made to me matters, so I keep that commitment. And if you get into that habit of being disciplined, then you become somebody that's easier for other people to follow. So as a leader, I think that's where you really have to focus. First, I have to be a good personal leader. I've got to have that covered before I can start leading others.
And so when you think about, not only personal growth and that leadership idea, I think oftentimes, we've been very blessed, Social Selling Hour. We have yet, knock on wood, 25 episodes. We have not had one person cancel day of or pull the no-show, and I would often think that, I would like to think that's because Rachel and I, and mostly Rachel, really seeds out the guests and invest the time in them, so that they can invest the time in us. But I mean, we're asking you as a volunteer. I mean, we're not paying you to come on the show. Yeah, sorry.
My agent didn't say anything about no payment.
Yes. And, you know, and Rachel and I both built this community when we outside of our current job. So this is something that we kind of do. But I think this is like kind of the essence of that. You know, all we've had to really do is ask people, and now we have people asking to come on our show. And that's not because it's an element where we're trying to giving and learning together. And I think if brands create these, and this is with content, this is with social engagement, if you can create these learning opportunities together, like the word collaboration usually often means that like you don't have to be if you the brand are collaborating, you don't have to be the leader of that collaboration. I think that's too often the problem is the brand says, I want to collaborate, but I want my name on it. I want to be the one that drives the thing. And why don't you? Can't remember who jumped in on Twitter and said this earlier, but I said I love creating conversations that lead to relationships, and he said I like actually joining existing conversations as well. And I think brands need to take that approach as well. It's join a community, join a conversation, join a forum, comment on a blog post, because now you're part of the team. You're not one that just wants to be the leader and hog the resources.
Where I've seen that done. Give me an example where you've seen that done, where the brand steps into a conversation that's already going on.
Well, I think there's some interesting ones from so we're lucky here on Social Selling Hour. So we have Movi, Tracker, Buffer, a lot of these companies, Hootsuite, that will just jump in and participate in the chat, never asking us to be a guest, never asking us to sponsor the chat. For them, they got in, communicated with it, and it even link drop, where I think that's the difference between a lot of these. They came in there, just added their insights, and left. And that, to me, provided way more value than a brand that would just jump in here and add their own link and say, well, we just said that in our blog post. Well, nobody cares what you have to say. You're not talking with the community. So, and I think there's other ones too. Even outside of social, I think some of the great brands that have let their leaders be ones where at social events. I was at Social Media Marketing World a while back, and most of the people at Social Media Marketing World didn't even know Social Media Examiner was the host. And I thought that was an amazing thing because it was their platform event that got all these people here, but they took kind of the backstage to allowing the presenters and the event itself to kind of lead the charge.
I doubt that they were happy that people didn't recognize that, though.
Well, hopefully they did afterwards when they got the follow-up email and asked for feedback, and it was from socialmediaexaminer.com.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into question 6 here, and we have about 7 minutes left. Conversation's been great. So what is the number one best-kept secret for a successful sales professional?
The very best secret is there are absolutely no secrets. Every single thing that you need to know to be successful as a salesperson is already known. Even in something as new as social, we know. It's interesting to me, though, how much time we spend looking for the new thing. We're looking for the shiny object. What's the new thing that we need to know? And really, it's mostly still about trust. It's about caring. It's about taking initiative. It's about being proactive. It's about being determined. It's about being there when the trains come off the tracks. It's all of those things, but we look for, well, there's got to be an easier way. It's part of the allure of social selling. Look, social selling is going to make prospecting easy. No, it's not. Prospecting is still hard. It's hard to be good at social. It's always going to be difficult to open those relationships when you don't know somebody and it's cold. I mean, a cold email is the same as a cold call, and it's the same in every situation, but we have to find ways to do the best thing we can, and the best thing is to create value before you claim any. The more value you create without claiming any, the easier it is for people to connect with you. And we've known all these things for a long time, so most of it's not new. We know now that you need to be able to gain commitments. You need to be able to create value. You need to be able to help diagnose. You need to be able to collaborate. You need business acumen. We know all these things. The problem is it's difficult to execute, and so we look for shortcuts. The big secret, I would say, is that if you want to do something really new, try executing for a change rather than looking for an easier way to get the result you want, because it's execution that's ultimately going to deliver the result that you want.
I like that you mentioned that cold emails are the same as cold calls. I think people across the board have forgotten that, and they send emails willy-nilly without showing the value first.
And my Google spam filter picks all of them up and weeds them right out because it recognizes that there's no value in those emails anymore. It's not helping.
You have a value filter in Google?
For some reason, the spam is a pretty good value filter, and if you don't like that one, you go to SaneBox, and SaneBox will just study your email pattern and say, this person goes in the later bucket because we can see how you think about their emails after we watch long enough. That's an absolutely wonderful tool to say there are different priorities. I mean, in the last question, I tweeted this, but I didn't say it, but productivity means doing meaningful work. So when you say how do when you think about productivity, it's not just doing stuff, it's doing stuff that makes a difference. And so 90% of the email that shows up isn't meaningful. It's somebody else's priority or their pitch that you didn't wake up one day and say, man, I hope somebody from a software company pitches me a new CRM today because I really want to be pitched. Nobody says that. But that's the way I think of it. It's about doing things that are meaningful, and the secret is to really just go out there and try to create the biggest contribution and create as much value, but follow what we know works. The rules are all out there.
No, I think that's also like an interesting element there where we're talking about, all these new tools and all these new networks, and I think you said listening and culture the most of this entire conversation, and it's like listening and those pieces there aren't fundamentally new for social media. They're just new places we have to learn how to listen better and hear. And for me, I've always been one, like I played hockey in college, and I wasn't the most talented, but I always thought that I could outsmart some of the people that were working harder than I was. And I've attempted to transition that into my professional world. And I mean, it's a sticky note on the bottom of this monitor right now that says, work smarter, not harder, because anyone can work for 22 hours a day. It's the person that figured out how to work smart for 12 hours this day and can take advantage of the rest of their time. I think that's where we get into this work-life balance. That's the key right there, is if you can be productive in your work and your life, the work-life balance is one in the same. And I love hearing you say that, because I think that's something that we often get overwhelmed by all these other things, when if we just be more productive in everything we're doing, it'll kind of streamline the whole world. And funny that you asked me what brands, and I know Reed Robinson jumped in, and so he's Hoot Reed, and so he's at Hootsuite, been engaging in our chats all these weeks, and not once has he had a drop that he works for Hootsuite. So he just jumped in there and said, and that's a cool shout out right there, is that he's investing his time in the community and and providing value without ever kind of making it a me situation. So I give him his me due now, since he's been a loyal supporter.
And that ultimately is a great place to end up in this conversation, because he didn't have to ask you to do that. He's generated the relationship, he's generated the trust. You want to do that for him now, because he's been a participant and he's contributed and added value to your show over these weeks.
Couldn't agree more. So once again, thank you to all of the community that are joining us, especially on Twitter, Google+. We had some real high viewership there on Google+ today. No surprise. Ian, Anthony, can you tell us where can people find you? What some, maybe some things you have working on, so that we can help get people in touch so they can continue this personal growth?
Best place to find me is thesalesblog.com. And from there, I'll connect with you anyway. There's about 1 million little social buttons across the top. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, whatever works for you, connect with me there. You will find a bunch of places where you can sign up for the newsletter. I believe that's the best content I create each week. It's long form. It comes on Sunday morning early, which I stole from Chris Brogan. And it will be a big idea that I want you to go out and apply on Monday when you get back to work. So if you want to do anything, go out to thesalesblog.com/newsletter, sign up for the newsletter, and I'll see you Sunday morning.
Awesome. We will make sure to put that in the show notes for sure. And we appreciate you jumping on with us again today. I know, Rachel, who's our guest next week?
Next week we have Thomas Sakaris, I think you pronounce his name, a social selling godfather out of Australia. He's doing amazing things down there. So
yes.
I look forward to having the guest.
That should be a good one. Our pre-show call had about 2.5 hours of dialogue back and forth. So that should be a great one.
Wow.
Well, yeah, it was. Well, I'm never usually shy to talking, and Rachel knows how to throw some softballs up there to get us going. So, but thank you everybody that joined. As always, we'll make sure in the show notes that the nice part about us doing these YouTube and these Google Hangouts during it is that the YouTube video lasts there forever for all of us to see that the two almost bald guys are accompanied here by Rachel this week, and we'll be back again next week. Social Selling Hour, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'm not sure what time that is Arizona anymore, but we will see you next week. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Rachel.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay. See.